Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever wondered what someone's daily life is really like, beyond what they might tell you in a quick chat or even in an interview?
Hmm.
I'm talking about their actual moment-to-moment experiences, what they're doing, who they happen to be with, and exactly how they feel right then and there.
Yeah, getting that kind of real-time, in-context insight is it's incredibly challenging.
Especially for certain populations, right, where maybe traditional communication methods aren't always the best fit.
Exactly.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into precisely that challenge, trying to understand the everyday experiences of adults with autism spectrum disorders or ASD.
A really important area.
Our source for this deep dive is, a pretty groundbreaking research paper. It explored a novel way to capture these crucial lived experiences.
Hmm.
And our mission really just to explore how this method, it's called experience sampling, how it used everyday technology like an iPod Touch to reveal some really surprising truths about daily life and preferences for individuals with ASD.
And what that means for support and understanding, yeah.
Exactly. And, what those truths mean for how we can offer better support and, frankly, build a more inclusive understanding.
It's such a critical area because our traditional methods often fall short, don't they? If we
Well,
genuinely want to offer client-centered care, we absolutely need to move beyond just general ideas about someone's life.
right.
We need to grasp the dynamic, kind of nuanced reality of their day as it's actually unfolding.
And that's the core problem, isn't it? What makes capturing these in the moment experiences so, so tricky?
Well, think about it yourself.
Yeah, like try to recall every single feeling you had last Tuesday, what you were doing, who you were with, how you really felt deep down. It's tough, right?
It really is. Your memory tends to summarize things, doesn't it? It smooths out the edges.
Yeah, you get that recall bias they talk about. We end up remembering about our experiences, not really reliving them in detail.
Precisely. And this isn't just some academic quibble. This memory gap has pretty significant implications for how we design interventions or support systems.
How so?
Well, if our understanding isn't based on these dynamic, real-time insights, our efforts might just completely miss the mark. Traditional retrospective methods often fail to reveal what individuals truly value or desire in their daily life.
Because they can't capture those little variations, the context.
Exactly. They just can't capture the subtle variations influenced by context. We lose those crucial peaks and valleys of daily experience. Interventions might end up being based on a fuzzy average, not the specific moments that matter.
Okay, so how did these researchers crack this in-the-moment challenge? It sounds like they needed something different.
They did. They turned to a method called experience sampling, or ESM.
ESM, okay.
And here's the clever bit, especially for the time this study was done. They put it right on an iPod Touch.
Oh, wow. Okay, so like an app.
Basically, yeah, ESM is a type of ecological momentary assessment. Fancy term. But it just means it gathers data about participants' actions, thoughts, and feelings as they happen, right there in their natural everyday settings.
Not in a lab.
None of lab. Over a period of time, usually a week or so, this is just invaluable for seeing how experiences shift across different contexts and moments.
Right, seeing the ups and downs as they actually occur.
Yes, exactly. ESM lets us explore the precise dynamic relationships between subjective experiences, how someone feels, and their real-world context, where they are, who they're with, what they're doing.
Okay.
Now, it's been used to measure quality of life in lots of populations, but its application to adults with ASD, and crucially, whether it could consistently and accurately capture their experiences, well, that hadn't really been thoroughly investigated.
Which brings up a big question, I
It
guess.
really does. Would individuals with ASD be willing and able to engage with a method like this? Given some prior beliefs about perhaps resistance to changes in routines or finding interruptions difficult?
That's a really important question. So, okay, let's look at the study design then. How did they set it up? Who participated?
Sure. They recruited 4 participants. All had a formal diagnosis of either Asperger's syndrome or what was then termed high-functioning autism. Their ages ranged from 16 to 32, and there were 2 males, 2 females.
Okay. And you mentioned potential challenges. So, were there specific criteria?
Yes, definitely. It was really important that they had pretty strong reading comprehension skills. They checked this formally, ensuring participants scored well above the basic level needed for the app's questions.
Why was that so crucial?
Well, they needed to be sure participants could independently understand and respond to the survey prompts accurately. They specifically excluded individuals with intellectual disability or more severe forms of ASD for this initial feasibility study.
Huh.
They wanted to see if the method could work first with this particular group.
Got it. So focusing the initial test. And the tool itself, you said an iPod Touch.
Yeah, or an iPhone. It was an app pre-installed on the device, which either belonged to the participant or was provided by the researchers. The app was called the PILE app.
PIL.
Stands for Participation in Everyday Life Survey Application. A bit of a mouthful, but descriptive. Participants basically carried this device around with them for 7 straight days.
7 days. Wow. And how did the sampling part work? Did it just ping them randomly?
Pretty much. Participants were signaled 7 times each day at random intervals across their waking hours for that whole week.
7 times a day. Okay.
And when the signal went off, they had a brief window, just 2 minutes, to respond to a short survey. It consisted of 20 questions.
20 questions in 2 minutes. Sounds tight.
It does. But what's crucial for accessibility here is that these questions were intentionally designed to be very simple and straightforward. The researchers checked the readability level. It was equivalent to about a first-grade reading level. So very easy to understand quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. And what were these 20 questions actually asking? What kind of snapshot were they trying to get?
They were trying to capture both the objective situation and the participants' subjective internal experience at that very moment.
Okay, like what?
So situation questions covered things like their current location, home, work, community, what activity they were engaged in, working, relaxing, socializing, and who they were with alone, family, friends.
Right, the external context.
Exactly. And then for the internal experiences, they asked about things like their level of interest in the activity, their degree of involvement or focus, and also perceived reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
Like, did they feel listened to by others in that moment? Or did they feel like they were caring for others? And then also core emotions like anxiety, loneliness, and importantly, enjoyment.
Ah, okay, so you get the what and the how it feels.
Precisely. It really aimed to offer a holistic, immediate snapshot of that slice of time.
Okay, so that's the setup. Now, the big question you raised earlier, how feasible and usable did this actually turn out to be? Did people engage with it?
This is where the results were really quite stunning. Participants not only responded, but they responded to an incredible 71% of the signals, on average.
71% out of 7 prompts a day for a week. That sounds really high.
It is. It's well above the 50% cutoff that researchers often consider acceptable for this kind of method. And they did it quickly, too. The average time to complete the 20 questions was just 1 minute and 42 seconds, well under the 2-minute limit.
Wow. So they weren't struggling with it.
Not at all, it seems. And perhaps even more importantly, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive.
What did they say?
Participants reported the questions were straightforward, the app was easy to use, and crucially, it interfered very little with their daily activities.
That's amazing, especially given those potential concerns about interruptions or routine changes.
Absolutely. This is profoundly significant because it directly challenges that traditional belief that individuals with ASD might resist these kinds of methods. This study strongly suggests a high level of acceptability, at least for adults with high-functioning autism or Asperger's. It kind of contrasted with some earlier observations, maybe more focused on children.
Okay, so people could and did use it, and they didn't seem to mind much, but was the data they provided actually reliable? Was it meaningful?
Another critical question. And the study found strong evidence for reliability and validity, too.
How did they check that?
Well, one way was consistency. They compared the experiences reported in the first half of the week versus the second half. Were people just answering randomly or getting bored?
Huh.
No significant differences. It suggested consistent reporting throughout the week.
Okay, that's good. What else?
The data also showed real internal logic, which points towards validity. For example, they found that reported enjoyment correlated positively with interest, which makes sense.
Yep.
You tend to enjoy things you're interested in.
Yeah.
And enjoyment correlated negatively with anxiety. Again, logical. Feeling anxious generally doesn't lead to enjoyment. They also found that feelings of loneliness negatively correlated with feeling listened to.
Ah, yeah, that tracks.
Right. So these logical connections between the variables tell us the data wasn't just noise. It was meaningful and reliable. It strongly supports the idea that these individuals with ASD can reflect on and report their authentic, in-the-moment experiences accurately.
Okay, fantastic. So With this reliable, in-the-moment data in hand, what picture did it actually paint of their daily routines? What did life look like?
Well, the descriptive results gave a really interesting snapshot. Participants spent a significant chunk of their time, about 67.5%, at home.
Two-thirds of the time, basically.
Yeah, and a similar amount, about 63.5% of their waking hours was spent without any social interaction, so mostly alone.
Okay. And what were they typically doing during these times?
And major activities tended to be fairly quiet, often solitary pursuits. Just doing nothing or resting accounted for about 20.5% of their time.
A fifth of the time. Wow.
Yeah. Then sedentary activities like reading or using the internet were about 16.7%, and watching TV took up another 11.8%.
So a lot of time spent at home alone in relatively low-key activities.
That's the general pattern the time use data showed, yeah.
I sense there's a but coming. Was there a twist?
There absolutely was, and this is the truly surprising part, the real aha moment of this deep dive.
Okay, tell me.
While participants spent, as we said, about two-thirds of their time alone and often in quiet pursuits, their subjective experience data revealed something incredibly powerful.
What was it?
Their absolute highest enjoyment came from social situations.
Really? Despite spending so much time alone?
Yes. Specifically, they reported enjoying being with friends, an intimate partner, or siblings more than being with other people, like colleagues or strangers, and significantly more than being alone.
Wow. Okay, that is a stark contrast. Spending most time alone or in quiet activity, but the biggest joy comes from socializing with close people.
Exactly. It's a potential disconnect between the daily routine and this deep-seated, in-the-moment preference or source of joy.
So what does this mean? How does this challenge maybe some common assumptions about individuals with ASD and social interaction?
This is really where the methodology becomes so incredibly powerful for understanding. It highlights this potential, maybe profound gap between what genuinely brings them joy in the moment and how they're actually spending their time day to day.
It's not just asking, do you like socializing, which might get a simple yes or no.
Precisely. You can ask someone that in an interview, and they might say yes or no, or maybe sometimes. But seeing social interaction emerge as their highest source of immediate enjoyment, despite relatively low actual participation in it, speaks volumes. It points towards potentially unmet desires or preferences.
Yeah.
It's that situation-specific understanding that the broader retrospective surveys, the ones relying on a memory, just can't provide. They average things out. This captures the peaks.
And there was another interesting nuance you mentioned, didn't you? Something about involvement versus enjoyment.
Ah, yes. That was also fascinating. The study found no significant correlation between a participant's reported degree of involvement in an activity, how focused or engaged they were, and their reported enjoyment of it.
So you could be really focused on something but not actually enjoying it, or vice versa.
Exactly. It means they could be fully engaged in activities they found enjoyable, maybe like reading a favorite book. But they could also be equally involved, equally focused in situations where they experienced low levels of enjoyment, maybe attending a class they didn't like, or a necessary but dull meeting.
So involvement doesn't automatically equal pleasure.
Not necessarily, according to this data. And that further underscores the power of this method. It captures these subtle, situation-specific experiences that traditional surveys would almost certainly miss.
Yeah.
Even when someone appears fully engaged, we can't just assume they're enjoying it. And maybe sometimes low engagement doesn't mean lack of enjoyment either. This kind of real-time data is just invaluable for trying to understand those internal states more accurately.
Absolutely. And thinking about the bigger picture, this isn't just about, academic understanding. It feels like it's about making a real difference in how we support people.
Oh, definitely. These findings have potentially far-reaching implications, particularly for developing truly client-centered interventions.
How so?
Well, by getting this real-time, context-specific data, knowing what situations, what activities, what company actually sparks joy, or perhaps reduces anxiety for individuals in their daily life, we can move beyond generic approaches.
Right. Not just assuming social skills training is the answer for everyone.
Exactly. We can tailor support to address the specific needs and preferences that matter to that person in those moments. Imagine tailoring support not just to what someone says they generally like, but to what actually lights them up or stresses them out in the moment.
Yeah, that feels much more personalized.
And ESM also holds immense promise for studying treatment effectiveness and for monitoring changes in symptoms, but doing it in natural settings, in the real world.
Instead of just in a clinic or lab?
Precisely. This could supplement or maybe even eventually replace some traditional laboratory-based outcome measures, which often don't really capture the real-world impact of interventions. Many current outcome measures used in ASD interventions haven't actually been tested in natural environments.
So we don't know if they translate.
We often don't.
Hmm.
ESM could be a critical tool for ensuring interventions truly meet everyday needs and make a difference where it counts.
And just the technology itself using the app seems like it has benefits too.
Oh, for sure. The electronic platform offers significant advantages for researchers. Data can be retrieved directly, it's already digitized, ready for statistical analysis.
Cuts down on errors, I bet.
Hugely. It drastically reduces errors and the time associated with manual data entry. Plus, the app provides precise timestamps on each response, so researchers know exactly when the data was provided.
Ah, so you can be sure it really is in the moment and not them filling it out hours later from memory.
Exactly right. It prevents those retrospective responses that could skew the results and defeat the whole purpose.
Okay, so this method seems really powerful, really promising. But like any study, I assume there were limitations or challenges.
Yes, of course. And the researchers were upfront about them. One practical challenge was actually recruiting participants. It proved somewhat difficult.
Any ideas why?
They speculated it might be due to some reticence among potential participants to initiate involvement in a research study, maybe concerns about the commitment. It's something to consider for future work.
Okay. And what about the participants themselves? You mentioned they focused on a specific group.
Right. The study excluded individuals with more severe forms of ASD or those with co-occurring intellectual disability. So these findings about feasibility and the experiences reported might not directly apply to the broader spectrum of autism without more research. Future studies are definitely needed to see if ESM can be adapted for individuals with more significant support needs.
That makes sense. Start somewhere and then broaden out. Where else?
Well, there's the inherent challenge of interpreting abstract emotions. When participants rate something like anxiety or loneliness on a scale, say, from 1 to 7.
How do you know everyone means the same thing by anxiety level 4?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without a shared, really clear operational definition, how can researchers be absolutely sure everyone is interpreting those concepts in the same way? The researchers tried to address this with some pre-pilot work and discussions around the questions.
But it's still a bit fuzzy.
It can be. They recommended that future studies explicitly include a discussion of these abstract terms during the initial training session with participants, just to try and get everyone on the same page as much as possible.
Okay, that seems sensible. Any practical issues with the tech itself?
Just a couple of small things noted. Participants mentioned the signal volume on the iPod Touch didn't adjust automatically based on the environment. So sometimes the beep might be too loud in a quiet place, or too soft in a noisy one.
Ah, right. Annoying or easy to miss.
Yeah. So training participants on how to adjust the volume manually is probably necessary. Or, they suggested, using devices that have a vibrate function, like an iPhone, might actually be more readily acceptable and easier to use in varied settings.
Oh,
That
yeah.
could potentially lead to even higher response rates.
Little practical things that make a difference.
They really do.
So, wrapping this up, this deep dive, for me, it really shows the power of looking at life in the moment, doesn't it? Not just relying on summaries or memories.
It absolutely does. The feasibility, the rich data, the surprising insights,
Yeah.
it's quite compelling.
It really makes you wonder.
If we know, through methods like this, what truly brings people joy and interest, even if it's, not what they spend most of their time actually doing,
Mm.
how can we as a society maybe help create more opportunities for those specific moments?
Yeah.
And maybe on a more personal level, what does this fascinating insight, this potential gap between routine and joy mean for how you might rethink your own daily balance? Between what you do day in and day out and what you genuinely enjoy in the moment. Something to think about.